Hey, welcome to Pastor Play. So now we're reviewing Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, Season 1, Episode 2, In Throes of Increasing Wonder. So we open with the present day Daniel talking with Louis' assistant Rashid, who doesn't really care less or even wants to be bothered with Daniel. Rashid is like, Louis is a god and I serve him, not you, peasant. He has a very kind of dismissive attitude towards Daniel. It's like, why am I, why is Daniel trying to interview him? It's like, you better interview with the vampire. I'm not here to be interviewed by you. And Louis is living like the Jeffersons, with this kind of deluxe apartment condo in the sky that sways and groans. It's got a life of its own, but I'm loving the ambiance and vibe Louis got going on with the art collection and like the servants, catered dinner. And, you will see, and they let Daniel know, he'll see Louis after the seventh course meal. And Daniel's like, how much am I supposed to be eating? Is he trying to fatten me up? Because Daniel's like paranoid. And I'm assuming maybe at some point in a later episode they may actually show like the day of that interview on the tape from the 70s. They may or may not, who knows, but it'd be interesting to see kind of like what happened, versus just hearing it in the tape. But anyway, we're still in present day again with the interview. And, it's like, as you're kind of seeing this kind of dinner unfold, I'm like, I want to come too, Louis. I want to eat some dinner, just as long as I'm not the dinner, you know, um, I'm just like, give me a plate, just don't put me on it. And, it's like, my blood doesn't even really taste that good, shaken or stirred, I don't know. But, then there's also, Louis mentions, actually one of the servants of Louis mentions, the farm. And, you kind of wonder, is it humans or, has Louis gone vegan or is it just animals? And, they kind of do let you know a little bit later. But basically, as they're eating, now we kind of go back in time to New Orleans, 1910. And overall, it goes over the span of like 6 or 7 years. It goes from like 1910 to like 1917. But currently, Louis dealing, is dealing with the effects of the choice he made in becoming a vampire and the effects that it's taken on his body. Lestat is burying, the evidence of the two priests that he killed. Um, and, Lestat also warns Louis that, they can only live off the blood of the living and that they can't, like, suck the blood out of the bodies once they're dead because it'll bring them closer to death, to a true death, So, and, in this, and to Louis, I mean, Lestat starts teaching Louis kind of like how to be a vampire, how to control his urges, how to hunt, kind of what type of people to go for. You don't necessarily go for like officials or, people in the army or, people who people would be looking for. You want to go for people who have like, I want to say like low status or people who aren't necessarily, you know, are going to be looked for basically, And basically, Louis' first victim ends up being this tractor salesman, you know, who ends up going back to, Lestat's home, trying to sell a tractor, which is kind of bad, But at first, Louis is fueled by the hunger of being a vampire. But once he actually, takes the salesman's life, he's kind of disheartened after the feeding, and he wants to go back to his old life, as a pimp. Which I don't know. I mean, even though they living good though, him and his family, they living nice. I mean, they got servants, and I mean, they got a nice. they had a nice thing going on, especially for that time, and being African American. So, but he's still a pimp. He's a vampire now, who's now a pimp. So he wants to go back to his life to try to escape the feeling of taking this man's life. And from there we go back to the present day with Louis. Now we're past the seventh course, and now Louis is eating with Daniel now, and he's like sipping blood like tomato soup and drink, and then he's literally drinking a living, like, screeching and crying baby fox in front of Daniel, who's just continuing. He's just eating. Daniel like, okay, you up here eating foxes? I'm not bothered. It's like, what does the fox say? Help me, bitch, help me. And the poor little fox, justice for the fox. That's what I say. And justice for that tractor salesman. He was just trying to make a sale. He didn't hurt nobody. But justice for the fox. That poor little fox is screeching. That scene was so messed up. And then later too, you also will see that he has the fox, he has the soup blood, and then also he drinks from a human. So he's Louis is still very much a vampire. I mean, he's doing it in a more civilized way. He's not just, the people are coming, everything is brought to him versus him going to it, And assumingly all these people are being, paid. But it's just very interesting. And so now we're back in time, and Louis is collecting his pimp payments, and his security guard Finn. He wants to manage the new gaming house from the alderman who got that new property. That they wanted. They wanted Louis to manage in the first episode when they were playing the card game. But Lestat lets Louis know that the bodyguard Finn is planning to rip him off and steal from Louis, overcharging on alcohol and the women and kind of skimming from the top. And then, Lestat lets Louis know that, vampires can read minds, and Louis like, are you going to teach me this? And he kind of shows him how to do it, and they can also not just read your mind, but they can also like view into your actual, like, the actual physical, like, manifestation of what you're like envisioning, kind of like watching a movie. And over time, Louis gets better at that too. They can't do it to each other because they're vampires, but they can do it to humans. Then too, over this course, we find that Louis has like distanced himself from his family. He's like over a half mile away. He still tries to keep one foot in, and being a human. He goes to visit his mom, and she kind of notices changes. She doesn't care for Lestat. His sister doesn't care for Lestat, but they've kind of accepted it. And we also find out that his sister is pregnant with twins. He gives her some money, for, and he can literally hear the heartbeats of the two twins in her belly. And he gives her some money, to help out. And then later too, we go to a meeting with Louis because he is like helping the alderman get this building up to par, to open. And he meets either with this Mr. Carlo, and who's either like a lawyer or maybe like a building inspector, and like the condescending way that he's like talking to Louis and, calling him boy and like touching his head, you actually have some smarts about you, boy, you're smart for a Negro kind of stuff. And, Louis just saying, yes, sir, and all that. And it's just like, don't touch me, ho. And, I almost wanted him to like bite his hand off. But then later we see that Louis ends up killing him. Lestat is like, you can't kill people like this because people will be looking for this man. And then they kind of get into a spat about or a fight about, like white versus black, and Lestat has this thing where he calls him a fledgling, like kind of like a student, I guess, which is his way of calling Louis a student. And and Louis like, it almost sounds like you calling me slave. Lestat's like, I'm not doing that. Why do you make it all black and white? And it's like, because it is black and white. Even though I imagine in France it would have been the same too. I don't think it was much different, but Lestat is acting like this is just like an American thing. But okay, I don't know. I don't really think so, but all right. And so basically, they have like this kind of an incinerator in their like backyard or whatever, and they put the Mr. Carlos guy's body in there, to basically incinerate it into ashes. And then now Louis has a coffin, and Lestat's like, I don't like to go to sleep in my coffin angry. What can I do to make it up to you? And Louis like, help me buy the Fairpay salon where, Lily used to work, that Lestat killed. And Lestat, he's like, it's not a good idea to mix vampire business and human business, but he does it anyway. And, he gives Louis what he wants. And so Louis buys the Fairplay salon, which is funny because he's still going to help the Alderman open up that other business, which would be its competition. But and then from there, he brings over a lot of like his the prostitutes and the different people over to the Fair Play, pay them more money, help them, have better lives because they're making more money. They're in a more like, you know, respectable, biz, or at least look of business is still the same kind of, they're doing the same thing, but it's still, it's a more respectable business, I guess, and just doing it in his other like, sport houses or whatever that he had. And he, then he, this goes from like 1910 through the span of like 1912 through like 1917, they say. And, he's having all these years of just making a lot of money, hand over foot. And there's a scene. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I forget. And then there's a scene where Louis, he's now visiting his sister, or he's going back home, he's visiting his sister, who's had like a third baby, a baby boy, and he almost kills his nephew, and he basically has to like put his nephew down, but he almost gives in and like, takes his nephew's life, but he stops himself, and he goes back to Lestat saying, I almost, almost kill my nephew. He's just a baby. And, Lestat's like, you're going to have to separate from them. I don't know why you keep doing this to yourself. It's going to get harder and harder. And eventually, they're going to notice you're not getting older, or, the way that he's becoming, kind of more like a predator, and, Lestat, kind of says they can go away or go on vacation. And Louis like, no, I can't leave my business. But, he's not going to be able to do this. He's not going to be able to keep this up forever, trying to like, live both human and vampire. And that's basically what Lestat is telling him. But he's kind of letting it play out, I guess. So maybe Louis will eventually just kind of get there himself. And then, Lestat, he takes Louis, like, I guess on a date, more or less, to an opera, but is offended at the male opera singer who's kind of off key in certain parts when singing with the main lead female opera singer. And, Lestat decides that the male opera singer is the one that he wants for dinner. And, they end up going back to, it looks like, back to Lestat's house. And Lestat ends up, he kind of berates the guy. And is like having him rehearse the parts of the play where he kept falling short on the notes, and then he just kills him. And Lestat is he's kind of I guess a little bit disgusted or again disheartened at how he kind of Lestat kind of treats this guy, and Lestat kind of like picks him in the neck where he doesn't kill him, but also where he can't scream, so he's still alive, and they're just like slowly draining the dude's blood. And and Lestat, Louis not handling, the murdering or taking lives of people for him to live very well. And Lestat keeps telling him he needs to give into his nature. He's a predator, but Louis not handling it the way that Lestat is making it seem like he should, or how easy it should be. And then it kind of ends on that. And you go back present day again with them having an interview, eating dessert. But so far, this is a good episode. I mean, this was a good episode. It follows up from the first episode. It moves the story forward, and you're just kind of going on the journey of Louis now trying to get a hold of, being a vampire and trying to maintain some sort of human life as a pimp. And the confliction of being around his family and trying to still be his like former self, which is kind of really impossible to do, but it's really good. And some of the moments to me was funny. Again, justice for that fox and justice for the tractor salesman. All right. And F you, Mr. Carlo, whatever, lawyer, building, commissioner man, whatever. But and I'm glad the nephew lived to tell. I'm glad the little nephew lived to tell another day. That was a cute little baby. I'm like, don't kill the baby. But hey, we're gonna see where it goes. It's good though. I'm liking it. I mean, this is a good follow up to 2. I mean, of course, I think it's either going to be 8 or 10 episodes for this season. But I mean, it's working. This is not a crappy episode. Again and again, like the design, like the production values there, how they look as far as like the clothing and all that stuff is there. The acting is good. I mean, nobody's like removing me or kicking me out of it, except for that fox screeching. But anyway, and that fox looked real. I mean, I'm assuming it was an animal, like a fake. But yeah, that fox was just screeching. What does the fox say? All right, so if you guys like this, hit the like button, leave any comments below if you have anything to comment on, and also subscribe. Again, I'm trying to hit 1,000 by the end of the year, so please subscribe. Other than that, see you next time.